I'd like to call the meeting to order. Please rise and join in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Certainly. Supervisor Moore,
Present.
Councilwoman McNamara,
Here.
Councilman Iacilli,
Here.
Councilman Pell,
Present.
Councilman Schiavone.
Present.
All right, we'll start our work session today with the review of the draft agenda for the December 10th meeting. It's going to be 5 public hearings. The first is for funding for water quality improvement project for the Suffolk County Water Authority Water Main Extensions project at Old Country Road in the hamlet of West Hampton. The second is a public hearing for the water quality improvement project requested by the Town of Southampton Highway Department for stormwater remediation for Long Neck Boulevard in Flanders. The third is a public hearing on the acquisition of 59 Montauk Highway in the hamlet of West Hampton and to amend the CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property. The fourth public hearing is for to accept a deed of dedication for open space in connection with the planned residential cluster plan known as Tuckahoe Orchard, Tuckahoe. And the fifth public hearing will be to consider enacting a town code article 32 as it relates to the amortization of non-conforming sand mines that meet certain criteria within the town of Southampton. All right, so let's
Thank you for that.
with the Michael,
Resolutions?
you're
Okay, so we have Town Board Resolution 2024-1178, co-sponsored with Councilman Schiavone. This is a resolution of adoption amending Southampton Town Code Chapter 298, amending Article 8 to authorize an exemption for the creation of new accessory dwelling units within the town. I think that there's a need for greater coordination right now with our housing department and also planning, just to kind of understand sort of how this would be implemented, as well as our tax assessor's office. We did hear back from some of the school districts, but not all. So I think we should probably withdraw this until we really kind of hammer down how this would be applied in terms of the broader implementation.
I'm fine.
Which will have to take place at the town board meeting because
Yeah.
it's on the docket.
Yes, thank you, Madam Clerk. Yeah, we'll
So-
have to withdraw.
I'm a co-sponsor on
Yeah,
this.
what do you
I
think?
concur that, I'll go with the lead sponsor with this. Do I need to be present at the meeting in order to withdraw this? I will not be present. I'll be up in Albany.
No.
Okay.
Yeah, I also think too that we were successful with Pro Housing Community. I think we also have the ADU Plus program that's still ongoing that our housing department is overseeing. So I think we should also see how more of that program plays out over time to decipher how this program would sort of be suited in the broader program.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Yep.
Town Board Resolution ID number 48187 to authorize the funding for a water quality improvement project for the Suffolk County Water Authority Old Country Road Water Main Extension Project. And that's co-sponsored by the entire board, subject to the public hearing. Okay. And then Town Board Resolution ID number 48293, co-sponsored by Council Members Schiavone and Pell, to authorize funding allocation for water quality improvement project requested by the Town of Southampton Highway Department for stormwater remediation for the Long Neck Boulevard in Flanders, which is long awaited by that community. Town Board Resolution ID number 48282, co-sponsored with Councilman Pell, to authorize the purchase of reflective sign faces and materials using Town of Huntington contracts. Town Board Resolution ID number 48290, co-sponsored by Councilman Pell, to authorize purchases from Northeast Sweepers and Rentals, Inc. for Ravo Fiat Group sweeper parts and service using Sourcewell contract.
Town Board Resolution ID 48294, authorizing purchase of Americans with Disabilities ADA curb and sidewalk requirement with DEAI Concrete Corp. Using Suffolk County contract.
Town Board Resolution ID number 48260 to authorize purchases of audiovisual equipment and IT peripherals from B&H Photo and Electronics doing business as B&H using the Omnia contract.
Town Board Resolution 48243, authorizing the purchase of concrete, asphalt, and related site work improvements from Eastern Suffolk BOCES contract.
Town Board Resolution 48306, authorize supervisor to sign contract extended the street sign blanks, reflector sheets, and traffic marking tape and Geo Supply Inc., National Highway Production, Little Enterprise of Ohio, LLC.
Town Board Resolution ID number 48304 to authorize the supervisor to execute a service agreement with Source Pass Contemporary LLC. Could I have a co-sponsor from the board on this? So
Oh, sure.
it can go.
Yes.
I'll do that.
I'll
Okay,
do it
thank
too. I'll back him up.
you. All right. Looks like it's a go.
That's for our IT department,
Yes,
correct?
very important.
Town Board Resolution ID 48303, authorizing the supervisor to execute the 2024 Human Understanding and Growth Services HUGS contract. Great organization.
Town Board Resolution 48301, authorize supervisor to sign contract with Pavement Service Inc. of multiple project plan and pavement service to be provided to the Highway Department.
Town Board Resolution ID number 48313 to authorize the supervisor to sign an amended contract with Greenman Peterson, Inc. for professional surveying and engineering services for the Noyak Road pedestrian enhancements.
Sunday, could I co-sponsor?
Sure.
Same. I was going to say ditto. Same.
This is
I'll go
necessary,
sponsor.
yeah, this is necessary to comply with the grant requirements. Okay, Town Board Resolution ID number 48210 to authorize the supervisor to sign an amendment to management agreement with Southampton Youth Services. Town Board Resolution ID number 48215 to authorize the supervisor to sign a contract extension for banners and signs with Fisher Signs and Shirts LLC.
Town Board Resolution 48320, authorizing the purchase of 2023 Ford F-150 4x4 Super Crew from Otis Ford.
Town Board Resolution ID 48292, authorize the purchase of food products and related supplies from Omnia Partners of Premier Inc. with distribution through U.S. Foods.
Town Board Resolution 48302, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, authorize supervisor to execute an interlocal agreement with the town of Islip to accept the town commingled containers obtained through its recycle programs.
Town Board Resolution ID number 48926, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, to authorize the supervisor to execute a 2025 fire protection contract with the Village of Quogue for the North End Quogue Fire Protection District.
Town Board Resolution 48297, co-sponsored with Councilmember Uselli, to authorize the supervisor to execute a 2025 support agreement for MRI Software LLC for the Town of Southampton Housing Authority for the administration of the Southampton Town Housing Authority Section 8 Housing Choice Voucher Program.
And that has to do, that corresponds to the work session that we had, right?
Mm-hmm.
Town Board Resolution ID 48298, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, authorize the supervisor to execute an agreement with Long Island Telecommunications and Electronic Services, Inc. for portable radios at the Hampton Bays Water District.
Town Board Resolution 48299, authorizing the supervisor to execute an agreement with Young Associates for surveys for 1253 and 1195 Noyak Path in Bridgehampton, co-sponsored with Councilwoman McNamara.
I don't remember this one. What was that?
I don't know.
CPF.
Yeah, it's CPF.
They need the survey.
Oh, I believe this is to potentially isolate an area for a communications tower.
Oh,
Mm-hmm.
oh, right. Okay, thank you.
it's also acknowledging Young Associates was the lowest bidder.
Town Board Resolution 48295, co-sponsored with Supervisor Moore, to authorize the supervisor to execute a 2025 fire protection contract with the Village of Sag Harbor for the Bay Point and Noyak Fire Protection Districts.
Town Board Resolution 48305, authorize supervisor to sign a contract extended to furnish and install asphalt with Corzini Asphalt Inc. and Rosemar Contract.
Town Board Resolution ID number 48325, co-sponsored by Councilmember Scavone and Iacilli, to authorize the supervisor to sign the documentation necessary to accept a Department of Justice grant for the implementation of a body-worn camera program for the Town of Southampton Police Department.
Madam Clerk, can you add me to that, please?
This was an agreement that we had with the Southampton PBA in 2021 for body cameras. And I certainly want to appreciate our police officers for working with the town to get this in place. And it's great to have a grant to help us out to pay for it.
Those body-worn cameras are so important.
Yes.
The Town Board Resolution ID number 48230, co-sponsored by Councilwoman McNamara, to award and authorize the supervisor to sign a contract with Ecotech Management, Inc. for electronic waste removal, recycling, and disposal program. And that's income generating. Town Board Resolution ID number 48323, to amend the 2024 budget for various departments. Town Board Resolution ID number 48321, to recall and rescind Town Board Resolution number 1397 of 2024 as it relates to scheduling a special election, and then we'll introduce a new resolution after the first of the year.
Town Board Resolution 48128, co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli. Consider former zone change from R22 MF44 to faculty housing authority development of 9 single-family homes of affordable ownership at 90 North Sea, Mecox, North Sea.
Sunday, could I co-sponsor that as well?
Sure.
It's an excellent initiative.
Yes. And Town Board Resolution 48129, to consider application entitled Quail Run for change in one non-conforming use to another at 929 and 933 Country Road, 39 Tuckahoe.
Town Board Resolution ID number 48262, to set the Town Board meeting dates for 2025.
Town Board Resolution ID 48226, co-sponsored with Councilman Iacilli, authorization of cost reimbursement waiver for the Eastport Chamber of Commerce Lighting of the Trees event held on December 6th, 2024 from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m.
And that's tomorrow night. I just want to shout out to the Eastport Chamber. They do a lot of nice work with the community, and they have a lot of pride for this event. So it'll be a nice community event with all families and folks coming together.
Nice. Town Board Resolution ID number 48208, to authorize the Peconic Bay Region Community Preservation Fund tax refund pursuant to the first-time homebuyers exemption for Alexander and Camilla Cardenas.
That co-sponsored, Cindy? Town Board Resolution 48318, to release a maintenance bond for Metro Storage located in the hamlet of Tuckahoe, and I would like to ask for a co-sponsor.
I will co-sponsor.
I'm sorry, was that Maria? Who was the,
Oh, I was Sunday.
oh,
Sorry.
okay. Thank you.
Town Board Resolution number ID number 48300, to appoint Joseph Mullen to Senior Accountant in the Comptroller's Office. Nice. Town Board Resolution ID number 48237, to appoint Peter Strecker to Assistant Director of Youth Bureau position from Civil Service List.
That
Town Board-
co-sponsor, please. Thank you. Sorry, Maria.
No, it's fine. Town Board Resolution ID number 48238, to appoint Justin Lettieri to Youth Counselor position from the Civil Service List. And Town Board Resolution ID number 48241, to appoint Zamora Arango Medina to Youth Counselor Spanish-speaking position from the Civil Service List.
Town Board Resolution ID 48309, co-sponsored with Councilman Scavone, authorize the acquisition of fee title for the property located at 15 Lewis Road, and acquisition of enhanced development rights on the properties located at 17 and 19 Lewis Road, East Quogue, and amend the CPF management and stewardship plan to include the properties.
I'd like to be added. I thought the whole board would be on that one.
You can add me to, Madam Clerk, please.
Michael, do you wanna?
That's okay.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Town Board Resolution ID 48308, authorize the acquisition of a conservation easement and restrictive use easement for the properties located at 210 Clay Pit Road landlocked, 215 and 1355 Bridgehampton Sag Harbor Turnpike, and CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property.
I'd like to be added to that one also, Cindy. Thank you. Town Board Resolution ID number 48310, co-sponsored by the entire board, to authorize the acquisition of 1195 and 1253 New York Path in the hamlet of Bridgehampton, New York, and to amend the CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property. The Town Board Resolution ID number 48307, I would like to amend this because I think it was inadvertently omitted the public hearing date of November 26th, 24.
This one's November 12th.
November
So
12th.
we'll give Kim the language. I already spoke to
Yes.
Kim, she knows.
I have a note for that, thank you.
Okay.
No, they did March 9th also, but that was the broader plan. You actually have a hearing for that piece on the 12th.
All right, Town Board Resolution ID number 48311, co-sponsored by the entire board, to authorize the acquisition of 59 Montauk Highway in the hamlet of West Hampton and to amend the CPF management and stewardship plan to include the property. And then there's one add-on. Town Board Resolution ID number 48312, to amend the 2024-2028 capital budget and add capital project SYS Center roof replacement.
I'd like to be added on to that too, please.
All right, good. I think that's it.
She's right outside.
She was outside there. It's 1938. Not 1935.
Did Kathleen write back about the?
So I'm gonna go good to keep this as a.
Yeah.
How are you guys?
Hi, hello. So now we have various proposed code changes by Kathleen Garvin, Assistant Town Attorney, and Sean McDermott, our Chief Building Inspector.
Does everybody have what I circulated yesterday, or you want another
Yes.
copy?
I have it.
I'll take another copy,
Another
please.
copy? Pass that to Mike. Anybody else want another copy?
Where did we have this already?
It's, I just distributed yesterday.
here.
It took me a while to put everything
were really loud.
back together.
Is this
Oh, we have it.
Yes.
I have it. Thank you.
Yes,
I'm so
okay.
sorry.
That's all right. There's 4 of them. There's 4 proposals. So I figured why don't we just go in order of the,
Yep,
packet
you've been
that I gave
busy.
you?
You've been busy. Well, when when I first met you, Katie, I said, if there's any code changes that you think would be appropriate for the board to
Yes.
consider, bring them forward. And she took me seriously. 'Cause look
Well,
at this.
and some of them have been kicking around for a long time. So let's go in order.
Okay.
Sean, I don't know if I think I was holding on to. So the first one that we wanted to consider is certificates for pre-existing non-conforming uses. Yep, this is a whole pile of them. So the first one is the certificates for pre-existing non-conforming uses. So right now, if you don't have a certificate of occupancy or certificate of compliance for a non-conforming use on your property, which some of them don't, right? Like some of them have been operating since 1957, since 1972. They don't have any COs. Typically, they don't run into any problems until they get a violation, right? And then the neighbors are like, oh, this has changed or this is abandoned. And they make some sort of complaint on it. And then they have to come to the building department to get a pre-existing certificate of occupancy for the use. Typically, the building department will ask for affidavits, they'll ask for photographs, they'll ask for something to show that the use has been ongoing and continuous, and then we'll issue a pre-existing CO. And what we've been finding is that many times the neighbors take an issue with that, right? They have no idea that a certificate's been issued. Typically, they're challenging, what some of the uses are, and then they end up making an application to the ZBA. So what we're proposing is to take that, the fact-finding part of it away from the building department, sending it to the zoning board of appeals. That way, the neighbors will be notified, we can have public hearings, we can have all of that evidence before the ZBA. And then the ZBA can make that finding and then say, okay, it does exist or it doesn't exist, and then they can bring it back to the building department to get the CO. So that's what's really proposed here.
Is this any non-conforming use?
Yep.
Because I remember Jim at one point saying, if it was more than one house on the
Yeah.
property.
Yep, and that's a
Yeah.
non-conforming use.
Yeah.
If you just have one single family dwelling that predates zoning, that just has pre-existing non-conforming setbacks, but the use conforms. So if I have a single family dwelling that's been on the property since prior to 57, I can still go to the building department. Yep. But if I have more than one, or I have,
Two dwellings.
or I
something
have,
like that.
like a junkyard or a sand mine or a dump or something like that. I mean, again, I don't know how many are left,
Or a mobile home park.
or a mobile home park, any of those now.
Okay.
And like I said, it's just,
Makes sense.
It's an extra layer.
yeah, and there are mechanisms in the code for that to happen. They could go to the building department right now. Sean could say, I'm not comfortable with issuing this, send it to the ZBA. He has the authority to do that. He could just deny it and send it to the ZBA, but we just kind of figured if we put it in the code, it's gonna be cleaner, and then everybody knows.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that's what I did there. If you look at the code amendment, I made two changes. The first change, if you look at 330-17, that section, I just cleaned that up. I don't know if all of you were on the board, but when Jay was the supervisor, the zoning board of appeals had the authority to change from one non-conforming use to another. And the town board at the time was like, that's something that the town board should be doing. So we took that authority, we put it with the town board, but this little section here still refers to 167B, that was the ZBA, and it really should be 185.1, which is the town board. So that's just kind of like a little,
B
housekeeping.
no longer exists.
correct. Well, B exists, but not that one, not the change from non-conforming to
Okay.
non-conforming. Then I've moved, like I said, then B now I've added to confirm the legal existence of a pre-existing non-conforming use. And then I did some housekeeping.
Since you're bringing this forward, can you talk about why we allow a 50% expansion? Because it seems to me that if it's a non-conforming use, why would we allow them to increase the non-conformity? I didn't understand that, why it was in the code in the first place.
It's just permitted. I mean, you guys could change it. If you thought that was a bad idea, you could eliminate that altogether. You could say, I don't want any more expansions of any non-conforming uses. I believe, I worked on that a long time ago, but it didn't go anywhere. I drafted it, and I think people who have the non-conforming uses kind of pushed back because they wanted it. And to be fair, sometimes we do find that it's the limitation, particularly with the single-family dwellings, is better than the alternative, which would be a huge house. I mean, you have the added density, which on the one hand, the town board, the town doesn't love. But on the other hand, you could eliminate two very small houses and have a huge house. And we've seen with the ZBA, because you have to come to the ZBA to expand that use, and we've seen sometimes the neighbors are like, I'd rather have the two dilapidated cottages than
A larger.
But yes, you could totally eliminate that. But I could draft it and you could have a public hearing and see what people think.
I mean, because we have the, you still can allow for changing one non-conforming use to another. That's still there if it's like a less noxious, offensive use, right? But it's still non-conforming.
The 50% increase is not an as of right. That would have to be changed by this board.
Well, right now, I wouldn't say it's as of right, but right now, when people come to the zoning board of appeals and they make that showing, they
They're
grant it,
entitled.
Because again, it's typically two single-family dwellings that are expanding. That's really typically what it is. You don't usually see the non-conforming businesses expanding because there's not that many non-conforming uses that are in buildings, right? Like that used to be the nightclubs or possibly a restaurant in a residential zone, right?
Well, we have one now that
actually, it's not gonna go too far, but it has a residential house in front, and then had it was apartments over the top with a car, service station underneath. But that building collapsed, it was in disrepair. But, it was also abandoned, the use was abandoned. So, but that was a split use, and there's a bunch of them in Flanders that have that split use.
Like a commercial use plus a
Commercial
residential.
plus a residential on top of it.
It's not a split zone, it's a split
Not
use.
split,
Yeah,
split
it's just
use.
split use.
Use.
Which makes it a non-conforming use.
Yeah, like the owners lived in the back, like
Yeah.
the penny store.
Right.
But with this, they could
Expand up to
expand the
50%.
size of the
Yep.
non-conforming use.
Yes.
Well, we have one before us now, where they may have to go to the ZBA, where they have two dwellings on one property. And they've got several variances to do some additions on the main house. Now they want to finish the basement. But that finishing the basement, they've already pushed their 50% as established through the two variances that they got. So they just want to, put a gym down there and everything like that. We said, you can't. You're past your expansion, and that's, so. But this is what we run into.
Why was it non-conforming in the first place?
Well, no, it was two, or
The
it was
house.
pre-existing non-conforming because it was two dwellings on one property.
Oh, two on one.
And they're doing work on the main one, and they've already done work, and through the ZBA, they were granted the additional work to be done, additions and stuff. But the ZBA established the last hearing that they had, which was several years ago, you're at your 50%, you can't do any more work. Other than maintenance, you can't do any more, like finishing the basement and stuff like that.
It just seems so weird to me to have, if the goal is, non-conforming, we don't want it to be like this, eventually phase it out, why would we allow it to be expanded?
I agree with that.
Could
Yeah,
have
well,
we should just talk about it some more, flesh it out. Wouldn't mind having it on it for a,
Okay. I'll draft it and we'll do another work
let's
session.
see, yeah.
I mean, there's no harm in having the public hearing and seeing, obviously it's a policy decision, you decide, but.
And thank you, what about, I love the notice to the neighbors idea. Is there would it be possible to make it retroactive? So that
No, because once you have your and that's kind of why you have the language at the back where no certificate exists. Once you have your pre-existing CO, you have vested rights. The only way that would be challenged is if somebody said it was abandoned, right? And then they would, have to make a showing that it was abandoned. But no, once you have your CO, you're set.
even if somebody hasn't necessarily acted in reliance upon it at this point.
Well, there is no reliance because it's basically, did this use exist? Did this non-conforming use exist? Yes, it did. Again, you would only be able to eliminate that if it was abandoned.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting harder and harder with pre-existing, and
Right.
especially non-conforming.
Right.
Trying to the affidavit, if you saw the affidavit, that's like, to find somebody to fill that out, it's like trying to find a World War II vet now.
Right, exactly.
It's getting harder and harder for somebody that would be around that long that has firsthand knowledge of the property. Now it's usually somebody says, well, I was a kid and I rode my bicycle by there and I remember seeing this. It's getting harder and harder to get a true affidavit to the pre-existing.
1957 is the date, Sean?
Depends
Yes.
on the use, yeah.
So
Like some of
who's
the
around, who's
some of the non-conformings would be 72, where it was
15 years old in
permitted at one point
1957,
and then
and so
eliminated.
18 years old in 1957.
Okay, well, thank you for that.
All right, that's the first one.
It's really good.
Yeah, well done on the draft, thank you.
Yes.
All right, the second one is the screening of dumpsters. This is one that one of the building inspectors, Marge Riley, brought to my attention. As you can see, it basically just says, screening of, if you look at this, you have to get, in order to get a commercial compliance certification, you have to show that you're in compliance with the screening of dumpsters. The section that it refers to is not dumpsters. It's something else I printed out, and so Marge was like, can you just please your section in there.
Okay.
So that's
totally
a simple
housekeeping.
one. Yep. So that one's easy.
Is any in the rules that the dumpster has to be can't be blocking a driveway, it has to be so far away from a,
I'm sure that it is.
Yeah.
Hold on, I'm gonna get my file on dumpsters.
you know, if there's a right of way through, it has to be,
Well, you can't,
I think this,
you can't block any right of way, you
Yeah.
can't put any entry gates, you can't put any deterrent or any obstacle in the middle of a right of way or
Okay.
partially in it.
but it's no rules where the dumpster has to be so far from the right of way.
I'm sure typically that the location of the dumpsters are established by the
Yeah,
planning
yeah,
board.
planning board
Hold
will,
on, let me just look.
Okay.
Site
The
plan.
section that we're adding now talks about they have to be covered, they have to be enclosed on 3 sides with a solid fence. They have to be, it says they have to be located in the rear or side yard and shall not obstruct access to utilities.
Or to the neighbors.
And then it says, again, enclosure. So I'm assuming the location of these, the planning board has already established. Like, we've seen them with the ZBA. I mean, nobody's ever asked for a variance for the location of them, but we've seen them on site plans and surveys. So, yes.
Because it came up the other day, somebody asked me, I wasn't quite sure.
Yeah, well, those are the sections that we have for the dumpsters.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, the third one is height and pyramid regulations. I'm gonna hand this off to Sean. This is housekeeping, but I find this a little more complicated to describe, so I'm gonna let Sean describe it for you.
alright, so, just, this is a bone of contention where you have people that don't understand pyramid, how we establish height, so we try to explain to them average natural grade, because generally, and part of this is, they go and they look in the diagram in the, well, used to be in a handbook that we hand out, that they tell people, don't hand them out anymore, because those diagrams are wrong. They show pyramid, which you have in front of you, on an angle, it's totally wrong. It's not how pyramid is measured, like that. And I mean, this has been, I've been here 18 years and I've been saying, why is it still in here? And it's never been removed. So that's part of this, is to remove those from, from the code book. They're not accurate.
Talking about
I mean,
the,
we don't need to.
the illustrations.
The illustrations, yeah.
This
And then
is
we're
not
just
accurate.
trying to clean
Correct.
up the, in the language of 33084D1, we're just adding, just cleaning up the verbiage. The average natural grade shall be determined by indicating spot elevations prior to any site disturbance. Because we run into people trying to make the grade what they want so they can fall within the pyramid. And then we just identify using
remember that.
NAVD 1988, which is for the surveyors, taken at the outermost points along the side of the facade wall of the building / structure adjacent to the nearest street, established on a plan prepared by a New York State licensed professional surveyor. So also, which just came up this morning through the New York education law, can also be an engineer. An engineer can also draw that.
So add engineer to that.
Add engineer to that also. And an average shall be calculated using the spot elevations as stated. The pyramid line shall be an average, shall be calculated using the spot elevations as stated. The pyramid line shall be drawn from all property lines, north, south, east, and west, using the average grade plane as stated. So it's just, we take it from the principal dwelling, not anything hanging off it. Each corner of the front wall of the principal dwelling, take the average grades, take the elevation at that one corner and then the other corner, and get the average. Once you establish that average, that plane goes right through the property. And that's where your pyramid is taken from. Like
Two
that.
corners. What if it's a corner property and it has 2 front yards? Do they get to choose?
You take, so you can look at the property and see how it is. Usually it's pretty much the same on either side, but
But it's also pyramid on every side,
on
north,
every
south, west,
side.
and east.
So, the property is like if you have a corner lot, unless the property jumps down like that, because then you're not going to take it from the. Well, so I
You'll
would
take
say,
it from, but you'll take it from every corner. When
Yeah.
when people have pyramid encroachments and they come to the ZBA, they'll say we need a pyramid encroachment of 250 on the north side, 350 on the west side. It complies on the east. So regardless of the yard designation.
4 corners, not 2 corners.
well,
Corner
so
should be
a regular
averaged.
lot, you're going to do the 2 corners. Then if you come up with a corner lot, right?
But the 2 corners that Tommy John is talking about are from the dwelling, from like the
From
2
the-
corners of the
yeah,
house.
The
Yeah, yeah.
principal dwelling.
On
not the
each
property.
corner,
Corner.
on
Yeah.
each part of the frontage.
Yes. And then you take the average, and then that plane is established on the.
The average for the north, the average for the south, the average for the east. the
Because it might be on a hill.
Correct, each part of the house, right? Like if you have the house, it would be the 2 corners from each side, right, John?
What happens if it's in a like FEMA area, flood zone?
Well, you have your elevations anyway.
Yeah, so you take
No.
it from there.
Yeah, you have your elevations anyway. You have to elevate your house. Let's take a base flood.
But they
Okay.
still need the variance, I think. Is
Yeah.
If there's an encroachment,
Yeah,
still-
if there's encroachment, yes.
So, if you're in a flood zone, you take it from the base
Base flood,
flood.
base flood.
And that gives you a little extra wiggle
Yeah,
room.
yeah, and then because your building height has changed also.
Yeah. Could add a couple of feet or.
Yeah,
you know,
and
so
then
it's-
if you have gable roofs, you get an additional 3 feet.
This is good to do because I remember watching one of the ZBA meetings and this was a point of contention
Yes,
as to whether there was already disturbance and fill brought in.
yes. Yes, and we've seen that, and that was the part that I was asking Sean, even about the 2 points that you picked up, Tommy John. I think maybe when you were sitting with the zoning board, building permits were issued, certificates were issued, the neighbors are like, the house is too tall and there's a pyramid encroachment, and there was a dispute as to how many points along the, whatever it says, how many points to take along there, and they were trying to get 7 points, because then the average was helping the property owner, and then I had said to Sean, are we okay with 7 points? How many points? He was like 2. 2 from the corners of the building as it relates to the corner of the property. So yes, that's one of the things that people worry about, bringing in fill or digging holes, right, and trying to get your elevations from there.
Mhm.
So this is really just clarifying what the interpretation has been all
Right.
along, but doesn't really say. And when you have surveyors or engineers from other towns, they get annoyed because they've calculated their pyramid based on the diagrams, and then we have to tell them that the diagrams aren't applicable. So I'm gonna have Tara figure out a way to cross them off.
These would be taken out.
Okay.
Yes, those will be taken out, and then the clarifying language will help explain
Okay.
the points.
And if there was no house there already,
You'd still be getting a snapshot, right, of
Yeah.
the natural grade as it was
Yeah,
identified.
they're gonna be placing the house on the property, so then we're gonna establish, the average grade from where they're placing the house. And you're gonna be looking at, the topos on the property and, and establishing it off of that.
And we have the topographic information before they even purchased it, theoretically, if they
Yeah, we
purchased
have,
it
we have
recently.
topos, on the property and everything like that.
yeah, because they could just bring fill in before they come in.
Yeah, they have.
Would this
the,
cover that
And
Yes.
they
when
do.
you're talking about
Yes.
the measurements?
Yes, and it's captured now, it's just necessarily not in the code. If, like I said, we have professionals from other towns, they get frustrated because they've had to calculate the pyramid multiple times. So that's
Okay,
that one.
Thank you.
This is a good law. The only concern I have with this law is that, houses begin to look like pyramids, especially in those smaller zoning categories.
Always sort of
They'll go,
putting them in,
yeah,
stuff like
they'll
that,
Greek
yeah.
revival, and then that is the de facto design in the neighborhood. But
Yeah,
people
well,
should know that, they just need to
building
get a
height's
variance
always
if they
been,
want to build a colonial.
a bone, and it depends on neighbors. A lot of people come into my office. It's where they're located. If they're over here, the house looks fine to me. but they're back over here, they're looking at the other side, you know, so if the property goes like that, you're good. If your property goes like that, you're
Right,
challenged.
right. And you see that in our R20, and R15.
Yes, yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, and then the last one is the distance from street setbacks. And this one came right out of a zoning board of appeals decision. I'm gonna try to explain this, I'm gonna let Sean jump in.
Is this
if
for
he can.
ADUs?
This is what?
For ADUs?
No, this is
Street.
this is an oddball setback one, right? So the town code, if you look at the chart that I have there, the town codes, you know, we have our setbacks set forth in 33011 for all of your houses, your principal buildings and structures. For your accessory buildings and structures, the setbacks are basically set forth as the distance from the side and the rear lot lines, which is self-explanatory. And then right now, the town code says the distance from street. And the reason that this became problematic is because, and jump in if I'm saying this wrong. The reason this became problematic is because for a waterfront lot, the water is your front lot line. So for your normal lots, the distance from street is the same thing as your front yard because the street is your front yard. But for the waterfront, they're flipped, right? So there is no setback from the water for your accessory buildings and structures. So the only thing that was preventing people from putting these accessory buildings and structures closer to the water would be wetland setbacks, or would be the town code prohibition that you can't have accessory buildings and structures in the front yard, you know, your required front yard. So somebody came to the ZBA, and because the building department was interpreting this as your front lot line, so they were applying distance from street setbacks from the water, which is technically not a street, right? Like the plain language says the distance from the street. So what we're doing is just fixing that to be consistent with the building department's interpretation, is that your front yard setbacks mean your front yard setbacks. It didn't mean distance from street, and it was getting.
Well, we also don't want people using the road right of way as part of their front yard calculation, correct?
The road right of way is part of your. Yes. Yes.
Right.
Yes. But for the waterfront ones, they do get a reduced setback from the street because that's technically their rear
The
yard.
rear yard, they have to double the accessory rear yard setback, so you're not having structures right up on the road.
Yeah, it's like you don't want structures right up on the road, but you also don't want structures
Well,
right up on the water.
I'm just thinking, basically, I'm just thinking North Sea Road with the, the right of way as it is now.
Mhm.
And people have built kind of in that right of way, and now that they're looking to put in sidewalks and stuff, that distance from the street is now changing.
Correct.
You're referring
But-
to the paved portion,
Yeah.
right? Right. When I think of a
Yeah.
street, it's like, where's the street?
Correct. But
And-
this is only really gonna
But this is for
matter
waterfront.
to the waterfront ones.
Okay.
If you have the right of way, this is still gonna apply. That's, because typically our right of ways and our roads are the front yards.
But how is this gonna affect our, I'm gonna call it the street side, it's not the front of the house, but the street side? So if we're implementing this change so that now the front of the house is the water side.
Nope, this will always apply to your front yard. So if I'm just a normal property and I don't have any waterfront, the front yard is the front yard. The
Be
front
your
yard,
front lot line.
yeah, the front yard is always the
But
street.
if the waterfront, it's flipped. Now, when we say
But would that
waterfront.
allow the house to be right up on the
No.
street
No,
right of way?
No, we're just clarifying, instead of distance from street, we're saying your front lot line.
Right.
Because you do have a lot line on the water side,
Mhm.
and you do have a lot line on the street, which is flipped in waterfront properties.
And in the code, you're changing it to just lot line
Lot
and
line.
not street, so
Yes.
it's clearer
Captures
for
both.
the yeah. Okay.
Captures the street.
It clarifies it for really both of the
Yes.
types of properties.
Yes,
Oh, it would apply to both
yes.
Yes.
So if I'm a corner lot and I have two front yards, so it applies, that will always remain the same. But if I'm a waterfront lot, I wanna capture that front yard setback from the water. And for the waterfront lots, you're encouraging all of your accessory buildings and structures to be in the rear, which is really your street on the waterfront. And then all of the other setbacks apply. The doubling of the rear yard setbacks for accessory
kinda
structures,
Stuart,
can't be in your required front, can't be in your required sides.
Because you get a storm underwater, that way it's not gonna get flooded out.
Yeah, I mean, and
Or
listen, a
destroyed.
lot of people come to the ZBA because they want their pools overlooking the water, they're,
Right.
up until now, we were incorrectly applying the setbacks, and then the ZBA will say, like you said, how close is it, how close are you to the water table, is there a bulkhead? But
So
at least
And you don't have to
These
worry-
numbers would apply to the front and the back, whichever.
these numbers would apply to the front.
Front.
The rest,
Front
if you
lot
look
line.
underneath it, it says the distance from side and rear lot lines, none of the setbacks are changing. It's just reminding people that if you're waterfront, this
That's
setback applies
But then they're closer to the street.
for the.
Well, they have to meet the zoning regulations, so for a principal dwelling, you have to meet, your zoning like that, and then if you, an accessory, so a lot of the accessories are still not in the required front yard, because they still fall behind that distance from the front lot line on the water. But we also have things pushing it back too, your conservation buffer.
Mhm.
There's usually always a pretty sizable conservation buffer in the front, minimal 50 feet, I think, that you'll see, sometimes even more.
I'm just wondering what it's gonna do to, is it gonna be pushing the houses closer to the street?
This is only
No.
for accessory buildings and structures.
Accessory.
So this is your pools, your tennis courts, your sheds, garages,
Yeah.
and again, no setbacks are changing. I'm gonna give you the ZBA decision, if you wanna look at it,
And I'm
just pass that down.
I'm sorry, Katie, and just to clarify, this is not inclusive of accessory dwelling units, even though it says accessory buildings and structures.
Accessory, you're talking about like accessory apartments?
Yeah.
Well,
Those
that
have
would be
their
an
own.
accessory, yeah.
Okay,
have
I just
their
want to make
own
sure that this has
setbacks.
this has no impact or anything. on
No,
that. Okay.
no, those
Okay.
are all of those setbacks are set forth in 330
I'll just put
11.2 or
variance
something like that.
Yeah, zone code. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay,
those,
thank
those
you.
are all separate, but like I
What's
said,
this you handed out?
that's the ZBA decision that talks about this.
Mhm.
It's really complicated, but it's worth reading. I mean, just
Yeah.
so you can see,
Look forward to it.
yeah,
Thank you for this.
Yeah.
Okay,
Thank
just
you.
accessory buildings and structures.
correct. And again, we're not, if you see, all of those setbacks remain the same. We're not touching the setbacks, we're just capturing, we're basically establishing them where right now there isn't one for the waterfront, for the front yard.
Mhm.
Okay?
And it's not uncommon for municipalities to declare waterfront as front yards in their municipalities. We're not
Not
the
at
only,
all. So
we're not the only
just-
town that does
Just
this.
clarification
And
on
it's in
water,
there.
on waterfront, that's natural waterfront. Like in Shinnecock Shore is where we have man-made dug canals. That's not considered
That's
your
weird.
front yard,
Okay.
okay? Those houses where those canals were dug, the spoils were put over on the side, and those houses were built on the spoils. So that's something that we look at, because
Back in the day.
sometimes you have natural waterfront, and then somebody, just dug a nice little canal in there for themselves, and they're considering that natural waterfront, it's not.
Thank you very
So I'm
much.
gonna make that
Thank you.
change that Sean mentioned about adding the licensed engineer, and we'll set these for
Do
a
we-
public hearing.
Do we need separate public, we do, we need
Yeah.
separate public
Yeah.
hearings, I need one of these,
Yep.
of course.
And I'll draft for the supervisor,
Can't
I'll
do
draft, we'll do a work
An omni
session.
hearing,
What's that?
can't do an omni hearing or something.
I'll draft I'll put a draft together for the elimination of the expansion of the non-conforming use, and let's see what it says. All right?
But I mean, it just came up, no, so everybody didn't have a chance to really think about it, but something.
Yeah, but I'll do a work
No, but we
session
know
on it,
about
because
it,
there
yeah.
will be public interest on that.
Yeah, yeah.
There absolutely will.
All right.
Thank you for this work.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Sean and Katie.
And Sean.
Yes.
I'm trying to make this job.
But
better.
you know,
I dragged Sean up here, I was like, yeah, come on.
Because that's your more.
Thanks, you too.
Happy holidays.
That's what I-
And he goes,
that's
your
what
hope
it
is, your hope is to.
All
Katie.
right, so next we have a
Who's
proposed,
the lead?
The supervisor.
I don't want any more
It'll
paper.
be on
What is
public
it?
hearing
No, no.
January.
Okay, I'll ask you later, thank you.
so next is a proposed code amendment to chapter 264 on public assembly licensing. Sean Cambridge,
all
our
handing
assistant
to
town
me.
attorney, and Ryan
better than
Murphy, code compliance and emergency management administrator.
It's code day.
Thank you for joining us.
It is. Thanks for having us.
Okay, let's see.
This is the one that I tried to walk on as a public hearing notice.
Yes, this is a pretty benign code change. This was last updated in 1993. This is the process for public assembly permits, which are licenses for commercial buildings with occupancy of 50 people or more. Our fire marshal's office has historically managed this permitting program, everything from intake to granting a permit to inspections. Our code, however, says our building inspector does all these functions. So we're not following our own local law. It could be a point of exposure for the town where, say, we revoke a public assembly permit and have not followed our own process. The crux of this is we've updated definitions to reflect the current titles of town employees, and we've updated this procedure to follow what we've actually been doing for about 15 years. Other than that, we just updated the suspension and revocation procedure. These things were happening, but we needed to clarify the process to be upheld.
And how did you update them?
That is our last section here, 264-9. We've added an emergency provision where the fire marshal can suspend a public assembly permit for a 48-hour period. That's essential because these are your boots on the ground. These are the people who are actually seeing conditions. We've had instances where nightclubs are using fireworks indoors, things like that. That's where we want a full shutdown for the whole weekend. It's usually a Friday or Saturday evening. We want that establishment closed and a public hearing scheduled to talk about revocation.
And the written copy of a notice of violation, what does that document look like?
That's what we use for code enforcement. Those are
So
the
it's something that they
NOVs
fill out
that you see.
on site, they're looking at
Yep,
the,
in triplicate, it's a standard, notice of violation, would cite the code, it would specify what they had done, and give an order for correction. So it's kind of a combination notice of violation, order to remedy, all in one shot.
So why would a public assembly permit be issued for, let's say, the example that you cited? There's a club, and then there's events going on there. What would be the impetus to getting a public assembly permit?
So every business doing business
Yep.
in the town of Southampton
Yep.
that's going to be occupied again by 50 people or more is required to have a public assembly
That's a
permit.
state law.
Right.
So it's not just isolated to the town of Southampton.
Yeah.
Under the New York State Uniform Fire and Building Code, anything with an occupancy of 50 or more requires a public assembly permit.
Right. Okay.
So that's typically, obviously restaurants, catering halls, any mass gathering, location that you have anywhere in the state of New York that has 50 or more people
Even
has
on
to
a
have
private
that.
house, private home.
Single-family dwellings are different, and you typically don't have like a 50-person occupancy assigned on a single-family home. It's governed by a different section of the
Like
code.
they
too.
would have
It's-
a tent in the backyard and have a wedding.
that's a
This
special
is
event.
different permit.
Yeah, that would be a special event permit. That's a temporary thing, but it follows a very similar procedure. If you're going to have a special gathering like that, and you're going to have a tented or a membrane structure, as it would be phrased, it still is going to get assigned an occupancy load, very similar to the way we would do a public assembly permit occupancy. Establishing how many people can be in there based on the layout, seating or standing, those types of things.
So can you just clarify for the public and also for us the difference between public assembly and public occupancy? Because
People get confused.
are they being used interchangeably here, or like what is the relationship?
So this is for a commercial building.
Okay.
For a business that's operating. I had mentioned town of Southampton because, yes, as Ryan said, this is a state law. You have the ability to designate who's going to manage a permitting program on the town level.
Which is the fire marshal.
The other figure that you're referencing, if you will, is the occupancy of a building.
Right.
That's how many people can safely occupy.
Right.
You know,
Only
any
200
building.
people in this room, or
Right.
something.
That's not totally related to this.
Okay.
Public assembly permit does a couple different things. It schedules a fire marshal inspection. As part of the application, they're going to have to give a floor plan for first responders to respond. It's also substantial at the state level. So a public assembly permit triggers an automatic SLA review of somebody's liquor license, if they're a restaurant, club, that kind of thing. So the town revoking a PA permit has a pretty widespread impact because now the state has to go in there and take a look at their liquor license to see if they're conducting business properly. When we've not followed our own procedure, that kind of ties the hands of the state, because now they're looking over and saying, well, town, you didn't do what you said you were going to, what you're supposed to do. How are we supposed to suspend a permit based on your action when you haven't followed your own law? So we end up in this cycle of no one can act. There's other ways we can act and other things we can charge, but it defeats our own section of law if we look to proceed in this manner.
Yeah, so essentially what we're looking to do here is really just catch the code up to the current practice, which is very similar to the practice in most other municipalities, and that's that the fire marshal handles this as opposed to the building inspector. It's how we've been doing things here. It's how most places do handle public assembly. It's typically a role that's more assigned to the fire marshal's office because it's really got its foundations in the fire code of the state of New York and the life safety issues of that. And then the second change here that we're looking for is the addition of the capability to do the temporary suspension, 48 hours, very temporary suspension of a public assembly permit when you have situations where people are egregiously and unsafely violating the law. And then that would then prompt a referral potentially back to the town board for a hearing for any potential revocation of a public assembly permit. It doesn't preclude the individual establishment from remedying the condition in violation and not prompting a hearing necessarily if they, but it gives right now, the way we have it set up, there's no in between. It's a violation and a ticket or revocation, and there's no kind of step in between that where you allow for like a temporary suspension to try and amp that up a little bit to send a stronger message to the potential violator. So this creates that step in between as well, which for a business owner could prevent them from potentially having to go the route of revocation and hearing. For us, it gives another tool in the toolbox to try and address a situation and escalate it. And it allows us to also address things that are threats to life and safety more immediately rather than a longer, more drawn out process. We can take a rapid action. So if somebody is defiantly, not following the code and putting people at risk, this allows us to take a more immediate action to solve that problem in the here and now, as opposed to letting the risk persist while we wait for the revocation.
And it also creates a culture of following the right procedure. Our fire marshals were not, approaching a dangerous situation and leaving. They were doing things like placarding a building unsafe, where there's no need to do that if the building itself is not unsafe and the PA permit needs to be suspended. We want to use the right channel. We don't want to do a good enough type solution to get the means accomplished. Also, in a practical sense, just to touch on it, your building inspectors are not on staff when these things are happening. Your fire marshals are. These are usually at night, these are weekends, these are times that you're not going to have a building inspector responding.
Could you give us a primer on public assembly? Occupancy, public, and then a public assembly permit. And it's really not what you're talking about here, but I think it's a good opportunity. We're on camera for the public.
Yeah, so the whole public assembly permitting process, there's multiple components to it. As part of the application process to obtain a public assembly permit in the town, and it's very similar in most jurisdictions, the establishment has to present to us, certain demonstrations of, in compliance with Department of Health regulations, insurance regulations. Part of it is that they've got an established occupancy for the location. That's that they have the proper COs to be open, and that there's been an established number of people that are legally allowed to be present there based on the layout and what's present. It involves an inspection of the premises to determine, whether or not it's compliant with, fire safety standards, if there's the right number of extinguishers. If you're talking about, say, a restaurant that can have more than 50 people in it, their suppression system over the cooking equipment is checked to make sure that works. the fire alarm system to make sure that all the horn strobes go off and everything like that. That's checked. It's a very thorough inspection of the premises, and then ultimately at the conclusion of that, they would get a public assembly permit.
So that on that Ryan, just for my clarification, then is this specific? And I get the change, especially the fire marshal. I think is a really good point. You know, because when things are happening on the weekend or late at night, I think it is a reasonable fix to have the fire marshal be sort of the individual that goes and evaluates and responds. But is this, based on what Ryan was saying, is this public assembly permit as it pertains specifically to public occupancy? Is that within structures, within buildings? Is that what this is specifically? Because there are different forms of public assembly permits, right? I mean, you can... No?
No, it's one public assembly permit.
You mean outside?
There's no like variations.
Right. What about outside versus inside? If you're,
it's all covered under the public assembly permit.
So this is not
outside
specific.
Space, inside space. It's all.
So this is not specific to indoors.
It's the
For the
premise and
location.
it's the location and premise and its
With their
entire
format.
Obviously, the structure has certain limitations and things that need to be present in terms of like safety standards that aren't necessarily the same for the grounds, but the not blocking a fire access lane on the premise is part of this too. Where is that layout? What does that look like? Is it a fenced in or contained space? Are there exits that can be opened freely, with panic hardware on them or whatever the case may be to get out of it? So it could be open air outside, but it's still factored into that equation. And, are you using the outside space for a dining area that then blocks the flow of people out an exit door into that, walkway space or things like that? So the outside is part of the inspection and the equation for the development of the public assembly permit. It's not just within the hardened structure.
So to your point, having worked in a nightclub, what would usually happen was the fire marshal would come in and they'd count heads, and they would tell you, "Hey, listen, you're over capacity inside. You got to get people out the back door." So what they would do is they would put a bouncer at the front door, one at the back door. The guy in the back door would count people going out. The guy in front would count people coming in. They would make sure they didn't go over their occupancy number inside, and when they got to the point, no one was allowed in until some people left out the back. So it's making sure you're not using your inside-outside space number and forcing everybody into a building. You have to equally distribute those people throughout the property.
Well, and it creates that intersection with other bodies of law, like the SLA, public health law. You can't smoke in a building that requires a PA permit. So this is going to draw a distinction between your grocery stores or your accountant's office. It's the size of your business and the use of your premise.
County health department too sometimes limits the amount of tables and people in seats.
I think some of the new regulations, even on cannabis, have implications with PA, where I don't believe you can have a public assembly space within a dispensary location, so that it doesn't. I think the state's intentions at this point in time with their regulatory documents are to not have those become PA locations, public assembly locations. So there are even intersects with some of the newer regulations that are out there for things like dispensaries and cannabis regulation.
Yeah. Plus some lane use consideration, just simply parking. Parking can limit the volume, the capacity of any building.
So the example that Cindy just gave about having people leave to comply with the numbers, should we put something in here because just to allow for that to occur? Because right now it looks like it's completely discretionary.
Right, that's the occupancy load that's in the definition section. So the occupancy load and the PA permit are not the same. The occupancy load is the maximum number of people in the building.
But I mean, you're saying, you wouldn't want the fire marshal to go in and just shut the whole thing down if there's something that could be done, like letting 50 people out.
That's still no good. If they're serving outside and things like that, we don't want them doubling their occupancy, if that makes sense. So we don't want it
I was
mooring.
just using the example that was given that if it, So the occupancy level is 100 and
That's-
there's 200 in there, and you
Hold
go
on.
in and say,
They would have to
get
leave.
rid of
That's-
100 people and you can
Yes.
continue
That's the
with your
difference
event.
between the building occupancy and the public assembly permit, correct? The public assembly does the whole property. When the fire marshal comes in and looks at the occupancy of the inside of the building, they have to meet that as
We
well.
needed for the PA permit's sake to leave the whole premise, not stay in the
And-
parking lot and not, be drinking outside and things like that.
And the first step is to try and gain compliance.
That's what
the
I
first
mean. I
step-
feel like it's
I-
not in here about gaining compliance.
Plus, the
or-
fire marshal would always
Well,
do, they'd come in and say you need to move people out.
Well, this also intersects with outdoor dining permits, so that's a whole separate code section, but that's premised on this as well. So that's the use of those outdoor spaces. We have a whole separate permit that you need from the fire marshal's office to utilize those areas.
But, so the code in general, even for other things, property maintenance things and things like that, it doesn't specifically call out the pathway to get to certain types of penalties, right? It doesn't say necessarily that this has to happen and then that has to happen and then the next thing has to happen. There's a degree of discretion that exists in certain aspects of the code for the people conducting the enforcement occupancy, it's a problem. You wouldn't necessarily want to say, well, you have to give an opportunity for this remedy first before you can go to that, because you'd have to do too many different scenarios, right? Because if you threw that in, it may handcuff you over here, where at the same time, if they were using pyrotechnics inside, but if the code says if they have the occupancy that's over, you have to do this before you do that, and it doesn't also say, but if they're doing this too, you can bypass that and go here. You'd have to do too many different equations to kind of cover it all. So we can't necessarily look at it as just this one thing, just occupancy, because there could be a whole, accumulation of different violations occurring at the same time. And it's the job of the people that are going in to look at the totality of that picture and say, where do we need to bring this to from here? Do we need to go to a ticket? Do we need to go to a violation? Do we need to go to a suspension of the
This
PA
is just
permit?
like it's like enforcement is in the discretion of law enforcement as well. Like they go in and sometimes they don't always write a ticket. They
Right.
Give somebody
And what you said is just
And
a
I
key
assure you that the
distinction.
fire marshals use the best discretion
Yeah.
possible we don't want to shut places down if we don't have to. We'd
These are-
much rather that everybody stays open and that they're successful, but not at the risk of people's safety. So if somebody wants to play a game and risk safety, then there's consequences on it. That's what it really boils down to.
And
again, it
it
gets
should
back
be
to-
underscored that these are our small businesses. They employ
Yes.
people. They're
Yes.
they're making payroll and
And
all
most of
that.
them
So we
come into
don't want to
compliance.
necessarily like
You want
Right,
the
we
fire
want them to be
marshal-
force.
successful.
Instead
Yeah.
of the building
And the
inspector,
fire
because
marshals generally know
One's law
what
enforcement and one's not.
right. What know the community. They know
Yes.
the businesses, and they may very well
And
so
they will work with
compliance is
people.
important.
They will work
That's
with
really
people
what
to
we
gain
want.
compliance
Yeah,
first and
sometimes.
foremost. And if there's a resistance to that, then there are potential consequences.
Right.
That's
You-
fair. I
Well-trained
get what you're
professionals.
On site.
It's been very
Yeah.
helpful.
What
Well-trained
about,
professionals.
I'm not clear on this 264-7 on the remedies, why there's two separate appellate authorities. One is for the Public Safety Commission and one is for the ZBA. Is there,
That's based on determination.
Because determinations of the building inspector are available to ZBA. Determinations of the fire
but
marshal.
we're taking out the building inspector on both, right?
Not entirely. So they still issue the CFO for the building, any building permits for the building. So there are instances where
And they might make a
264
determination on
five,
unsafe structure,
for
too.
example, we have the building inspector able to make a determination the use is inconsistent with the permitted CFO.
Where are
in
you
section
looking?
B,
265.
264.5B. So that's only a judgment call a building inspector can make.
I feel like we took out all the references to the building inspector.
Except in this.
There's a couple
here.
still that remain in because there are crossover opportunities.
Because it says public safety official.
Because your fire marshal's not gonna interpret your CFO, your building inspector is. That's the office issuing them. So we need to leave that discretion alone.
And you may have a situation where, like, you have a car into a building, or some sort of an unsafe structure type concern where a building inspector gets called in, and they make a determination on something as to whether it can operate. And if there's a challenge to the building inspector's determination, that has to go to ZBA.
Yeah, it's actually good because it invites them in.
Yeah, so they're not completely stricken from the code. There are a couple of still, presence in here. The parts where it's switched over from building inspector to fire marshal are more really specifically dealing with the issuance of the public assembly permit itself.
So does the building inspector fall within the definition of a public safety official?
Yes, they're also specifically listed in these sections where it's applicable. So what this looks like in real time is a building inspector denial is going to be on an application level. So this person is applying for a public assembly permit. The fire marshal's office is going to do a full review, refer to the building department to say, does this permit application match the CFO for this building, the certificate of occupancy? If no, that's a denial. That's appealable to ZBA. If a fire marshal, Friday night, they go to do a check on a business. There are double the number of people in. People are allowed to smoke indoors. They say, no, we're suspending your PA permit tonight. That's appealable to our Public Safety Commission.
I think it's also important to just note that for our building department and for most building departments, all of our building inspectors are certified New York State code enforcement officials. So keeping them in the mix a little bit also expands our net a little in terms of the eligible individuals that could enforce aspects of this code if need be. So we wouldn't want to strike them entirely. There are components of this that really belong to them still, and then having them in for certain other aspects of it makes sense because of that code enforcement qualification that they also maintain as well. So they could very easily, in a variety of situations, fall into the category of a public safety official because they are New York State certified code enforcement officials. So even though it may not fall into some of their routine duties, if, for example, there was a building inspector available, but there wasn't somebody from a fire marshal's office or code enforcement available, they can enforce any code of the state of New York and any code of the town of Southampton at the same time. So they are still eligible in that public safety official category as well.
It gives you bigger coverage on both sides. I think I like it. It's very good that you came here and said all this.
And we've
Public.
defined it on the first page as an employee of the town of Southampton working with or in conjunction with Emergency Management Division, Code Enforcement Division, or other administrative position or civil service title designated by the town board. So that is a pretty broad stroke.
Okay, hang on, let
Thank
me
you.
just check one more thing.
So this is an authority that the town has already had. It's just really a sort of a reallocation of responsibility of how this is carried out.
It's just a correct statement of how we're currently doing it.
What's the reference to the administrative tribunal in 264-10-4? Does the town have an
That's the language
administrative tribunal?
for our surcharge. The administrative tribunal would usually, in this instance, be a justice court. You'll see some municipalities are switching to an administrative model where everything's a violation. East Hampton has just done this. Huntington has done this.
I think ISIP is starting to do it more.
Probably on the way to do this. So if you switch from using the justice court to administrate building zoning violations to an administrative tribunal, that covers this, but it also covers the justice court or administrative tribunal.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to have to update. This is in almost every penalty section that we have in the town code.
It covers everything.
Yeah, we don't want to have to update every single code section should the board decide to go a different way.
Gives you the option in the future.
I know there was some talk about administrative judge for the bus program, and then the justice court just
then there
contacted
was
me
some
about something about an
conversation-
ALJ, so I don't know, do we need permission from the state to have that? An administrative tribunal?
It came up in the
Yes,
conversations that you and I were present for with regards to some of the issues countywide with the party houses and the noise violations that are are being seen in, you know, some of the western townships in Suffolk when we were at the meeting at Town Hall in Islip. And I think there seems to be a trend. It's something that perhaps we'll end up speaking about more in the future too, because it seems to be something that more of the 5 western townships are considering or switching over to a little bit of a model of too. I think we should evaluate, you know, that and some of their success or experiences with it as they start to migrate to that, and then maybe it's something that we would want to consider if it seems to be working out in some of these other places.
You think
They have a
in lieu
different-
of
Yeah.
They have
in lieu of a
different judicial system.
violations going to like a district court or a justice court?
Yeah.
Yeah, Huntington has done it. And,
Yeah, Huntington and Babylon, I think.
Yeah.
have it.
And their judicial system is different. You know, they have the district courts, which is under the purview of the state, whereas we have our justice court, which is under the purview of the town. So there's not necessarily about control, but is where the fines go, where the
Right,
that
that's some of
monies
it
go.
too.
It's not
Right.
necessarily doing away with one for another.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just changing the penalty section of the section of our code.
At which point, which ones go where?
Right.
Yeah, and so as maybe not to inundate, you know, a justice court with charges up to a certain point and have those go here, and then once it hits a different threshold, it might go there
Well,
too. You know?
Totally just leave everything alone in justice court is a different possibility. You can simply change the fine structure. So our court has both civil and criminal jurisdiction. For example, they do landlord-tenant trials on Thursday and Friday morning, and then they're doing criminal calendars Monday and Tuesday. So if the board's inclined, you can take the unclassified misdemeanor designation away from things, make them civil violations, and what that does is it lowers your burden of proof to preponderance of evidence rather than beyond a reasonable doubt.
I think this is a whole nother work.
That's a whole different conversation. But
It's going to interestingly tie in
Yeah.
potentially to the next conversation.
Yeah.
It's a good segue to the short-term rental monitoring conversation.
That's why it's important to have this in the work
So
session.
if maybe Sean can stay for a second, it may come up as just a topic of conversation. And again, I don't think we're going to come to a conclusion on the short-term rental monitoring conversation, which is the next topic on the agenda, but I think we can toss a couple of things out for consideration, and that's really what this is,
Okay.
you know, now for that topic.
Well, with respect to this, though,
yes.
I think, you know, thank you for coming in, and don't think that we didn't support what you were proposing. It's just we had questions that we wanted to clarify, so we appreciate the time you took to explain.
Thank you.
The
The
public
different
gets to see
provisions.
what we're doing.
All right, so
I
the
just
next.
want to make a point of thanking you, Sean, for bringing this forward. And make it clear that you did this in a very transparent manner. I mean, you were called out at a public hearing and, you know, scolded for having done this before. And I also want to clarify that, you know, a work session is not a requirement to bring something forward. We're all entitled to write pieces of legislation and bring them forward as we see fit. Yes, public hearings are, you know, work sessions are great. Sometimes it's something that one of us might see as a very cut and dry issue that came to all of us with an explanation that I felt was clear and nobody responded to. Therefore, I picked it up and brought it forward. So I just want to make that clarification that Sean did absolutely nothing wrong by bringing this forward at my request. So.
And I didn't realize that you were being, so, you know, I would not have thought that you were doing anything inappropriate. I mean,
I
and if somebody
appreciate
said something in that regard, that was not right. You were just doing what you were asked.
That's
of
all right.
course.
That's, you know, whenever I draft, I try to circulate to the whole board, and that's the procedure we've been trying to follow.
And you did.
And I think just the last meeting, I think just the members wanted to just have some extra time with this. That's all.
So have a chance to see it.
It was
Yeah.
circulated on November 18th to everybody
In an email,
with an
but there were
explanation.
there were some particulars as we expounded in this work
Yeah.
session meeting that we were able to kind of pin down a little bit more specifically.
It was a notice of public hearing. It
It's
wasn't.
not an emergency.
we can
and,
squabble about
you
it,
know,
but-
would have been explained at the public hearing, but
The reason I like work sessions are because then we can get the law in the shape that we want it before it goes to public hearing. Like there were some tweaks to the ones that Katie brought to us. So, you know, then you're presenting the public with something that everybody's comfortable with and hearing then their input. So unless it's so completely straightforward and no one has any questions, I mean.
And this was
some
complex with
sort-
respect to occupancy and assembly, and I personally I wanted some clarification. I know that.
Sean asked if anybody wanted a work session, and nobody requested a work session. That's why I brought it forward.
Going
Well,
as a walk-on.
we had-
though,
He's-
is aggressive.
We had
There
some
was
questions,
there's
so.
been 10 notice of public hearings as walk-ons. 2 of them were denied and both of those were mine.
Well,
There was no
I
reason to
enjoyed
do
this.
this as a walk-on.
Yes, I think
It's
it was
not
very
an
good.
emergency situation
We
to
can
be
s-
dealt with.
We can sit here and
We-
squabble about it for another 20 minutes, or we can go talk about the next subject.
Just pointing
There's
out
no
that it's not
rush.
an unheard thing.
No rush.
It's not, it wasn't personal, and
It
there's
wasn't
no
a
rush.
resolution.
It wasn't personal, and there's no rush to get it done. It wasn't an emergency situation, and
It's
always
just a procedure
better
that
to
we've
take
been
time
doing
with it.
incorrectly, and
You said yourself, the supervisor likes to have, work sessions on code changes.
Only
I
on
think
mine.
It's always beneficial. And, yeah, it was an oversight that nobody responded. Yeah, okay, yeah, let's have a work session on it. Sometimes we get such a large amount of emails, we just don't get to review everything in detail until it comes to a head. So anyway, thank you. And so why don't we move on to the next section on short-term rental monitoring.
Yes, so I wanted to just take a moment. We've actually been trying to throw this onto the agenda for a while now. It's been a little while, but you guys have had a lot on the agendas, so it's kind of been pushed back a little bit. And I know at least one of them along the way. I'm looking at Janice because she's been struggling to schedule this with me. I know at least one of them I ended up having another meeting on, so I fully accept responsibility for some of that delay. But for our consideration, and we're a little beyond, obviously the budget cycle for, developing for 2025, but I think this is something that we can think about and talk about. It's something that the board had looked at, previously, and had some conversations about, and it just never kind of really grew legs and went anywhere. And since then, there have been some changes. Since we originally looked at this as a town, the short-term capability of short-term rental monitoring software options, there have been some changes. One of them is that one of the companies that we had looked at since then has engaged with the county and works with the county comptroller's office, and in the process of doing that, did property identification, address identification for the entire county of Suffolk. So the prices that we had originally gotten went down by almost 50%. So it was a huge change to go from, say, between $130,000 and $150,000 down to in the 70s. That's a big difference. Since then, also other municipalities have started to engage with other companies and other options that provide similar service too in the short-term rental monitoring software, business. And so I think there have been some other examples that might be out there now that have come up since we looked at this. And this has been a process. We've been looking at this for a little while now, and between cost and lack of other examples of places out there, doing the same thing, and just other considerations along the way, we've never really kind of, pulled the trigger on it. And I think this is a good time to talk about it because we also do have Association of Towns coming up in February in the city. And there are a lot of vendors that are present at Association of Towns that some of them we've talked to, and I feel very badly that we've kind of like strung them along in the past, and it's not been on purpose to not go with them. We've genuinely had interest in this, but we just never got there with it. So what short-term rental monitoring software really involves is there are companies that offer the capability to kind of scour the internet on different sites, whether it's Airbnb, VRBO, Out East, Home Away, whatever. Some of them do it on 60 or 70 different platforms that they scour, and they look for properties that are either A, renting without a permit altogether, or B, renting in violation of our minimum stay code, right? Our minimum stay code in the town of Southampton is a 14-day minimum stay. So they have the capability to see if there are rentals that are occurring for 1 night, 2 nights, whatever the case might be, 1 week instead of 2 weeks, and they identify these properties for the municipalities that engage with them. This is really useful because it's a constantly moving target. It's a bit of a whack-a-mole game in terms of trying to keep up with where these things are showing up, when they're showing up. Sometimes people put a property up for listing, and then as soon as they get an engagement, they pull it down. And they don't put it back up again until after that engagement has happened. So if you're not consistently watching every moment of every day, it's really hard for the human element to monitor this, in a super effective way.
And they don't even list addresses, right? On
Right,
some
that's the other
websites.
part of it too, is the lack of addresses on a lot of properties, and then having to kind of cross-reference that with our own GIS system or Google Earth or whatever to try and say this picture matches this property. Sometimes on some of these listing sites, it'll narrow it down to kind of an area, but it won't tell you where the property is specifically until you engage with them as a prospective renter or buyer. So these companies take some of that effort out of the equation for our staff, which is who's doing this now, as they can on a daily or weekly basis, looking to try and find these places in the sectors that they're assigned to, and that's a big burden. It's a tough lift to try and keep up with it. And when you say, some of these places I just said are scouring, 60 or 70 different platforms, our folks are looking at, the top 2, 3, 4 platforms that are out there that we see people using most commonly. But, platforms come and go quite frequently too. The new best, a flashy, place to go and rent things on can pop up, and we might not know about it right away. So having a place that can kind of search a wider database, cast a broader net, look for these types of rentals that are either occurring without the benefit of a permit or are occurring in violation of some of our standards of renting would be very helpful to us. It's just something that I would like us to revisit and consider again. We haven't had that opportunity to have this conversation as the new board. I haven't had a chance to address all of you with this. I think now is not a bad time to talk about it because I'm hoping that we have an opportunity coming up in the next 2 months to visit some of the vendors that might be present at Association of Towns and see what's out there again. We had a lot of conversations with one particular vendor on this, but there are other options out there too. So we may say we like something better than another.
But it's worth saying that one vendor is the one that is contracted with the county and has all
Yes.
of the data, so would most likely be the cheapest. And it's worth adding to this too. Not only is it, for me, the most important part of this is the safety aspect of making sure we catch these rentals. 2 is the income generated on the rental permit. And 3, we also had our sole assessor looked at this program for catching people who are basically qualified for enhanced star or star exemptions, but they're renting out the property and they're not living there. So it's also it's actually money for the taxpayers because it's capturing that tax revenue that they're
Yes, I think that all speaks to the ROI on this, right? The return on investment, I think, is pretty good here. If you catch X number of properties that are renting without a permit and they come in and they get the permits, which the most important part of the permitting is not the revenue aspect of the permitting. That really kind of just covers what we do to go through that process. But the revenue from these uncaptured rentals that are occurring, and then adding to that the benefit that it might serve the assessor's office in terms of people that are claiming a homesteader star type exemption where that's their primary residence, but really 280 out of 365 days they're not living at that residence because it's being rented. Being able to document that with the use of something like this too is potentially helpful in accurately recovering any kind of taxes that aren't really coming in the right way too. So we had included Lisa in some of the conversations about this along the way. Like I said, we've been talking about this for probably 2 years now.
And she supported it fully.
And she had interest and seemed to like the concept in terms of the possibility that might help her office as well. I think there's an opportunity there for that
Cindy
too.
and I had a Zoom
Yes.
call with one of the vendors, and they did seem to offer a lot of good features.
Yes.
And just another, I think potential implication here for something like this is that there, and Ryan, you and I have spoken about this, is just housing in general in the town of Southampton. You know, if we're looking to enhance, home ownership, this is also a way to kind of sort of pin down all of these, rentals that could be actually used for housing instead of, the
There's a
abundance of rental units that
Yeah, there are a variety of purposes that this could definitely serve. In meeting with some of these companies in the past, they've done a great job of identifying for us what the average daily, or nightly rate is in the town, which in, the summertime is astronomical. They also have their fingers kind of on the pulse of, what rental permitting costs are. I mean, in the town of Southampton, based on conversations we've had with a variety of vendors at this point, our 2-year permitting costs are under the national average for a 1-year, rental permit. And I generally don't think that we're under the national average in terms of, a lot of aspects of things. So it would be revealing to us in terms of a lot of other data and details about the rental situation in the town of Southampton.
Yeah.
What are the costs? What are the revenues? What are people bringing in? What is it costing us? How much of this is occurring? So they're, on top of identifying properties that are non-compliant or not necessarily maybe paying the right share of taxes, I think there's a lot of other uses for this data and engagement that, we might benefit from if we consider it. So,
So how best do you recommend that we go forward?
I think at this point in time, it's probably best that we look to, we put this on people's radar, and I think we look to examine the issue between now and February and use Association of Towns, use the vendor presence as well as the other municipal presence that's there to maybe pick other people's brains that have engaged.
Yeah,
I think since then Greenport might be engaging a little bit. So it's something we could always talk about too at some point at East End Supervisors and Mayors.
And your counterpart in the county, though, can you speak with them to find out how they're doing?
I don't have any counterparts.
They did it.
So
They
there-
did it to capture. But they did it
There's
to
only
capture.
one Ryan Murphy, and it's
They did it
Well,
to capture the hotel tax.
Right, and
Yes, that's where they're capturing is hotel motel tax at the comptroller's office. Yeah.
ours is zoning and assessment based, and then of course there's rental tax. But when the county increased the hotel motel tax, they put considerable amount of investment in capturing the rent, and it's predominantly from the East End too.
It's
So,
definitely, I
right,
think, a
so
lot of
they,
it.
they're making some money off of these, and that's been their focus.
Well, I think that was their driving force was the missed tax revenue.
Mhm.
Really was what motivated them to dive into that
Right.
and do the property identification and everything.
I
else.
just to Ryan's point though of having engaged on this multiple times. The one vendor that we were having discussions with, she has been extremely helpful. She's done multiple presentations with, like I said, the assessor, with us. I would just ask that everyone, after Association of Towns, if we're going to move forward with this and bring them in maybe for a work session for a full board thing, that we're really serious about going forward with it because she has invested a great deal of time in it.
Would we have to bid this out? I mean, this is a significant cost, and I've always supported it.
I think it's
Yeah.
amazing.
Some of these companies are
I've
sole
talked to
source.
them. Excuse me?
Some of these companies are sole source providers,
Yes.
that they're the only one doing this.
We
this
also
way.
may be able
County
to piggyback
contract.
off of an existing
County
contract
contract.
too.
Right.
So if one of our fellow municipalities is
County.
engaged with, whether it's the county, we might be able to with the one vendor. But even if we look, or if we're looking at other vendors too, and Babylon, Greenport, Southold, whoever has engaged with them, there may
We
be
could do it via
piggybacking
Mac.
language built into the contract too.
You started your presentation saying that we do have options, and there are other companies that are moving into
Yep.
the market. That's why I asked.
And
that.
the system is portable, so someone on a laptop, officer on a laptop could be in front of the house and go on.
Yes.
That's good.
Yes, there are, depending on the different vendors, there are some very nice automation features to it and
They
things
send
like
out
that.
the letters.
How is it
Yes.
generally billed? Is it a monthly flat fee?
We never got that
You
far.
didn't
I don't know whether it's
From
an
what
annual
from what I
or whether
remember though, the
it's-
cost wasn't, the
Well,
cost was basically, we could have regenerated it through the assessor's office
Yes,
and,
yeah.
and rental income.
Yes.
For what it's worth, the
I
first
don't know
time
how
we
they
looked
built
at
that,
this,
though.
it was tied to registration of foreclosure properties, and now that's no longer the case. That has changed significantly. So some of these packaging options are gonna be a little different than
Yes.
what we spoke about.
And it's all about what modules too you want. Some of them have, neighbor reporting features to them and things like that, which we're not necessarily interested in because we have SOS here at the town. So it's there's kind of a menu of options from a lot of these providers to say, okay, I want this feature, and that one, but I don't want any of the other stuff, and that impacts things.
So it sounds like we'll gather some information on how that, how we'd go about it for next steps, and we'll maybe have another work session
Yes.
from there.
Yes.
While you're looking, it's important to mention some legal concerns. We don't want to receive information and not act on it. We never want to be in notice and then not do anything. So we probably want one of these automated systems that's going to at least send a warning letter once we're notified of a condition.
Oh yeah.
Because then we're not in a failure to enforce
Right.
type
Yeah.
pattern.
And as I recall, that's one of the things that they do for us, right? They send. the
Most of them
initial
have that
warning, yes.
capability.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But
Sean.
it would be like a make or break feature that we would look for as we consider these.
I think there's a good middle ground step forward, to start, gaining compliance without having to really punitively,
Well,
hurt
that's
people.
where our
We
last
try for it.
conversation
Yeah.
kind of linked into a little bit. Our next conversation is about how we're going to enforce this.
Right.
And the complexities of litigating in this way. And
That could be
got
where
it.
we go back to that tie-in from the previous conversation with the,
Good point.
tribunal option. too.
Okay.
So for future conversation, I think that's on the table.
Well, thank you for
All right.
that.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, we are ahead of schedule, but I see Janice and Seth are here. So our next topic is the Department of Energy heat pump grant application. We got Janice Shear and Seth Race
Hello.
about this.
How are we doing today?
Hi.
Hello.
Morning.
Thank you.
Seth, take center stage.
Yep.
Because he's been working very hard about this.
Yeah, so I'm bringing to you the Department of Energy grant that you had looked at the prior work session and had authorized a resolution to sign the documents for the grant.
Oh, right.
So we just wanted to just take a little moment to discuss what planning was interested in doing. We had selected a certain project area to use the $126,000 grant that they have actually allocated to us, and we just needed to pursue.
And Seth, can you also just explain too? This is a culmination not only from work that you've done in your department, but also the sustainability committee has also been working on to try to find ways, obviously to move residents off of fossil fuels and oil and propane gas generated energy. We don't want to mandate necessarily these kinds of transitions. We want to find ways to incentivize rather than do that. So that's part of the impetus that's behind the goal here.
I couldn't have said it better myself. Yes, we undertook 3 different strategies through the clean energy communities, with the guidance of the sustainability committee. We were doing community campaigns for solar. We were incentivizing the purchase or procurement of battery energy vehicles, and we were also looking at the green energy transition for the electrification of heating and cooling. That is something we had brought a contractor on to help us perform, which we did 2/3 of which, netting us $400,000 in grants. That last part, heating and cooling, was something that we weren't able to achieve. We were not able to achieve insofar as the grant money ran out because so many communities had done quite well.
Yeah.
This one came to light, this energy efficiency and conservation block grant came to light as a perfect way to feed into the one thing strategy we hadn't completed, which was the conversion of like I say, heating and cooling to electrical heat pumps, in this case, air source heat pumps.
So to be clear, this is from the U.S. Department of Energy, this money, they said, hey, we have this pot of money. Do you want to submit a letter of intent? Do you want to do something?
Right.
So who refuses that, was no match, right? So we said,
Yeah.
sure, let's send that letter of intent. Now is the part where we have to actually fill out the grant application. And what he's saying is we have an out-of-the-box strategy that we were going to do from a different NYSERDA money that we didn't get to. So we're going to put it over to this program and use it for that. So I just want to be clear as to who's what in that
So
case.
would this be for new units or units already upgraded?
No, yeah, so let it
Yeah, so I
get
should
into
probably
all
stick
that.
to the script a little bit.
Sorry, I didn't mean
and-
to, I just wanted to clear the.
It's good.
Is
where
this
it's
because we
coming from.
have the 3-star or 4-star?
Yeah, so
rating
the
that
Department of
we're-
Energy, so people are seeing that we're doing really good work in there, like that ends up leveraging more opportunities, I think.
Yeah, we achieved leadership on Long Island through the CEC, and we want to maintain that leadership by moving forward with other grants. And in this case, the Department of Energy gave us an opportunity to upgrade or retrofit residences from fossil burning heat source or heat sources to something like an air source heat pump.
And it would be for disadvantaged community.
We would like to take it
That
in
would be
that
us.
in that
Okay,
vein.
yeah.
Yes, we want to focus on disadvantaged communities, and we would be able to really leverage some of the existing incentives that are out there from PSEG LI and Suffolk County. If you'll see, I think on page page 6 shows you what a typical mobile home. Sorry, I got my page numbers wrong.
We don't need
What they would pay to upgrade their system. And you can see there's a number of different incentives. $250 if you're a senior. PSE&G will be doing weatherization and basically encapsulating the building envelope so that it's sealed and well insulated. There's a number of different incentives, including electrical upgrades. So that would leave the individual with, well, I still have to spend maybe $215, maybe more. These are round numbers. This is where we can come in with the DOE grant. We take it that final step. Those people will get this thing done for free, and we've used all those different incentives that are out there, and we can actually notify the public that those other incentives are available to them.
And you're gonna help the people navigate through this?
This would be
Yeah, so
part
we would
of
be
it.
setting up a town
That's good.
program that does this.
Very
That's the
good.
idea.
It's a hand-holding and marketing strategy as well.
And the administrative cost, it would be included in this.
No, we
can-
have to get a separate contract person to do this.
Yes,
Like,
we-
can't
the
do it. Not
DOE
in-house. I mean, I'll
allows
manage
for
the
it.
grant money,
Mhm.
but we would get someone to do this work. So and I just want to say the subsidy is up to $2,000.
Yeah, so it
that
would
was the idea. So you'd get more people. You'd have to put a cap on the subsidy, so that it would be.
And it has to be already built units. It can't be like.
These are,
Yeah,
we
it
are,
can't
we
be-
are
It's targeted like
retrofitting.
mobile home
Yeah,
parks. It
I mean, it
typically
can't be
run off
a
by
new mobile
natural
home. It
gas.
has to be one that's been there pre-existing.
If we want to use the other incentives, these are all retrofits. These are
Yeah.
increasing the insulation, weatherization, and we wanted to really focus on the mobile homes because we want people with low to moderate incomes to also benefit from the green energy transition. It shouldn't just be the wealthier individuals who can put solar.
This will save them money
This
monthly.
that's the real
Mhm.
Is it
driving
cheaper
force.
to run a heat pump or an electric heat pump versus natural gas?
Oh, yeah.
Abso-
Especially because
yes.
National Grid just got approval to raise their rates. So they're just going up.
So
And
the
as
three-
these rates increase
the
every
three temp-
year, it's become more and more
I just
difficult.
back in the day when electric heat was like,
Sure.
Yeah.
3 mobile home parks in Riverside that's in phase 1 of our STP project. They would also fit squarely into this program that we would be
Right.
creating. That's great.
I'd also say
I
that
think
there's
that's
a
fantastic.
there's a precedence that many municipalities have been setting as per the green energy transition, whether it is solar or heat pumps. Many municipalities are doling out their own monies to try to incentivize just resident residents to just transition, and they're putting solar on their roofs or installing heat pumps. So this is, I think, a great way for us as a township to start getting familiar with how we could adequately sort of model that type of incentivization.
Absolutely. This is the beginning. It's a rather pilot project.
Yeah.
And if we can if this really works out well, we can
Keep on going.
keep going.
But that is people seem to do think, myself included, that electricity is more expensive than.
Well,
other
the heat
alternative.
pumps are really efficient. We're talking pennies on the dollar to the old electrical heating systems. And as we're bringing renewables online, we're making it so that those air source heat pumps are now running on renewable energy, which is the
Let's say you're in an area where we've created a CDG,
yes.
then now you're even
Well,
more
we
getting
have to set
subsidized.
the parameters of that program, of that
Solar roofs.
solar program. So, capturing some of these individuals in that program as well would be helpful.
Absolutely, because that true affordability is also being able to afford your utility costs.
Right.
So that's the thing.
Big thing.
So is it possible to walk this on, or
It's
there's a
already
timing?
done. We just were,
Yeah.
wanting to make sure that we have. So when we had a resolution 2024-1386, when you did the letter of intent, here's what the resolution said: authorize the supervisor to submit the U.S. Department of Energy Clean Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant, and it outlined, that we were doing this. And then the resolved clause was that the supervisor is hereby authorized to submit the Energy Efficiency EECBG program application. And this resolution acts as a letter of commitment to allocate the money awarded by this grant. But now is all the paperwork that follows. So there was a lot of confusion and requests to make sure that everybody's all on board, understanding that we're going to apply. We basically got the money earmarked for us.
Yeah.
Now we have to go, just like with the
It's just a
other
formality.
appropriations that we've had. Now we have to go through the formal applications. Those applications will end up on the supervisor's desk to sign. I believe this resolution gives that authorization, but we wanted to just come back and say, we're definitely, keen on doing this program.
Going the right way.
We're gonna go in this direction with the board's support.
Admittedly, it was rushed. There's been quite a scramble to get some of these grants before they disappear. And quite honestly, it was CEC, the Clean Energy Communities, all those wonderful grants that we got from them. They told us we are closing up shop or we're running out of funds. So we were immediately scrambling to find a new source.
And they may be going away for other reasons too.
That's unfortunate.
Well, let's hope and that's the idea. We need to submit the application.
Right.
There was a lot of concern from members of the Sustainability Committee that we needed to work session again to confirm this. We didn't think we did, but we, at your request and at others' requests, we're here before you to confirm that we are doing this. You're happy with this idea, and we'll go on from there.
I'm very happy.
I think it's a great step forward in helping us get into that model direction of incentivization, and this is all obviously applicant driven. So the person has to express interest that they want this, and I know that we are actively engaged in a community outreach effort that our sustainability committee and many others are also involved in that effort as well. And this is going to help satisfy that broader community engagement.
My question about the affordability piece was simply because I just wanted to make sure that, this is very appealing and it's going to be great for people. I just wanted to make sure that we weren't giving them an option that in the long run was going to cost them more money, because at the time, if you have an option of replacing what you have and having to pay for it or getting something free, you're going to go with the free option even though it may cost you more down the line. So
yeah, the intention would be to,
but I'm happy to hear it's cheaper than.
Yeah, I think that it's just so incredibly efficient that's what distinguishes it from the old electric heat that we've all
Technology has
experienced
improved.
here in the Hamptons.
And you're also including the weatherproofing and all of that in with it. So.
That is, yes. So we're looking at something that would cost the normal homeowner $30,000, and they're effectively getting it for free. And certainly we wouldn't want to push something that in the long run doesn't help them out. So we will make sure that that's
So we'll be
that's the
saving
case.
money on their monthly costs, lowering our carbon footprint, and then the other program of the STP, hooking them up eventually and mitigating nitrogen from going into the Peconic estuary. Good work.
Just a second,
Board.
please.
Yes.
I guess $30,000 pays for a lot of electricity.
Yeah.
I'm just not clear on, so this is what the money we're getting, 126,000, and then you're gonna provide that to certain individuals? I mean, how
Equipment
do they
rebates
qualify?
is the main, so it's a voucher program. We're going to be partnering with PSEG LI to find, they have a list of, I think, 51 contractors that are involved in this. We will be outreaching and marketing to disadvantaged communities primarily, low and moderate
within
income.
the line of the Justice 40, right?
Exactly,
That's
yes. That, and
important.
40% of those monies would be allocated to low to moderate income per Justice 40.
And these systems, they last, right? We're putting in capital systems, so to Councilwoman McNamara's comment about, $30,000 could buy a lot of electricity, it also produces significant amounts of carbon, which is what, theoretically, I think as humans we want to avoid, for the future. But also the capital programs are going to last far beyond, the costs that, we could probably,
Right,
spend
it's
on
only
electricity.
$126,000.
Right, so how much
it's
is-
not that much money, but it's the proof of concept. It's the beginning of a pilot. It's enough for us to get underway.
But our portion is 250 to 2,000, right? We're like
No,
the
we don't
end?
have
This
no
is
match.
all, this
No
is a
match.
voucher program so that the
We're just getting the
contractor will
money
send the bill
and use it.
to the Department of Energy and they will reimburse the contractor for the equipment and the
Which is
labor
really
to
good.
install.
And what's the general cost you're saying for
So-
the equipment and installation?
So we have set the bounds at between 250 to 2,000 per individual. This would all come down to how much is their electric panel actually going to be able to take an air source heat pump. If not, they would probably need some extra help getting a new panel installed and the breakers
Right,
involved.
like this money will go
So-
toward those items as well.
What were you saying was $30,000?
Well, that was if John Q. Public walked off the street and said, "I want to upgrade my mobile home to an air source,"
If they just
heat
want to
pump,"
retrofit without
and
any
retrofit.
assistance.
It would be $30,000 to do the weatherization, to do the upgrades to the electrical system, and to purchase and install the equipment. It would be around $30,000.
Right, so we're partnering with PSEG, we're partnering with other entities who are giving away these things with a municipal partner, and we're working on, we're using this money to help upgrade their
So why aren't
weatherization and paneling.
they
et cetera.
handling the administration of the program and we're just coming in at the end with that final dollar amount?
They are.
It was-
We're tacking on some, and we're helping people be aware of these programs, helping people get signed up for these programs, and handling that.
Oh, you're just
delta
saying
in
the
cost.
outreach and marketing.
We're doing
is the
outreach and
town.
marketing and helping them get
The equipment
the
rebate
equipment
at the end, they are
rebates.
not doing that.
Yeah, the people that put them in are gonna do all that, but we're doing the marketing outreach to the, locations that we just described, to the homes
Find a
of
customer.
people there.
But
to
are
the
you saying we are
customers.
gonna have to hire a staff
Well, we
person
would,
in
no, we're
order
not
to
gonna hire,
implement
well, yeah,
this?
we'll have, similar to we just did for the car program, EV pilot, electric car, and we did for, the NYSERDA stuff. This is just a different pot of money to continue that same good work and get that accomplished.
Could we also make sure when applicants are inquiring about this particular program that we are also incorporating the North Sea Community Solar Project into that, so that there is that potential 8% reduction in utility
We have to
costs?
set that. We have to set the parameters.
I mean, it
for
doesn't
who's
have to be a
eligible.
mobile home park either. If someone in a small cottage in North Sea wants to do this,
It is
they're
not limited.
absolutely
No,
eligible.
it is not.
So we're
That's
not
going to be
limiting.
the
I'm just
focus.
saying
Yeah.
as a pairing of trying to make sure that
Absolutely.
Yeah, and the more we we're doing kind of proof of concept, get all the subsidies and everything, and someone can retrofit, upgrade, and then we say, well, that worked well. Now let's go for more money, more places, and then we start saying, well, these are areas where we already know, we're putting solar in a sand mine over here, and this happens to be an environmental, area that we can now make a CDG out of it and give people rebates in that way. So it's sort of it keeps going. It doesn't stop. It just starts here, and if everyone likes the results, then we can move forward.
Can this money be used to pay the consultant who's gonna help us with the marketing?
There are parameters. I'm still trying to
I would
iron
just
out
think-
all the wrinkles.
I would just think the contractors would do the outreach if this money is available for grants for
There
them to get
is a
for doing
planning
it.
component to this that is part of the DOE grant monies. They understand you have to have outreach and marketing, and the numbers that I put together were again the $250 to $2,000. That would, if you did 50 people, or again, it's all dependent on how much each individual use. But we were thinking it's $100,000 for all of that equipment rebates and to the individuals, and maybe I just set aside $20,000 as administration of this program. This is all in its
And I
infancy.
believe this is why, like, the climate action plan suggested we hire somebody in the planning department to do all of these programs and things and oversee them.
Right now, it's been us, but
Yeah.
mostly
That would be
more,
great.
I'm just thinking it's becoming a lot from
somebody
you
in
guys,
that
and if we
position.
continue to contract out for this stuff, it may pay to get somebody in-house to do it.
It's true.
I mean,
Well,
that's
that
what I'm
would be
saying.
their
So
job,
here's
yeah.
a proof of concept pilot little project. If we
Yeah,
get 50
let's see how it
people,
works.
we're lucky.
Yeah.
Let's see how this goes. But yeah, this all leads toward we're trying to cost save and create a kind of revolving fund of cost savings and grant leveraging.
And it has to be owner,
That benefits
the
the
owners have to live there.
residents. Yeah.
It can't be like someone has 3 cottages or 3 trailers and wants it done.
You have to
I'm
income
not
qualify.
sure that we.
But you have to income
you
qualify.
have to income
Yeah,
qualify.
PSEG has created an income qualification
Through
by
Justice
family
Good.
size. Again, just like the solar lottery, we're going to open it up to low and moderate income per this chart. That's where we want to start. And then at a certain point, we have to open it up to, we'll open it up to everyone.
Yeah, I
You know,
think
one of
it,
the- one of
there's
the-
just regular middle class, that may not be low income, but
Right.
may
One
really
of the
benefit from
advantages of a
something.
mobile home park is that their systems are nearly exactly the same. And their construction is very similar. I mean, so when you plan for one and you realize the cost, and how to install and, how the thing runs, then you can do 30 more, that's nearly exactly the same.
Right.
Yes.
Makes sense. It's a good plan.
Thank you
We'll come
for
back with an update
the
after
details,
we
yeah.
launch this and see how this goes.
Yeah,
That would be
we'll
great.
send in the
Yeah.
application,
Send in the
and fingers
application.
crossed, we are a little behind schedule. It closed on the 31st, on October 31st. We put our foot in the door and
We put our foot in
and
the
said,
door
please
with
wait
the
for us.
letter of intent, and now
Yeah.
we're going forward
Okay,
with the
good.
grant application
Yeah.
itself. Okay, great.
Keep my office informed.
And any questions, feel free to.
Do you have an extra one of this for the supervisor? I don't know.
Is this it? No.
Yeah, it's just the.
I'm
Here you go.
sorry.
I have that. Oh, I didn't.
That
Jeff.
was
Thank
already
you.
adopted.
Okay, good. I just was making sure that we didn't need
This was
something else.
adopted already.
That's what
Thank
we were
you.
concerned, but when I read this,
Find
it
my
sounds to
copy.
me like we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. very
Yep.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you,
So we
guys.
don't
Coming
need
in
any
for
further
work
action
session.
on the board's part. Thank you.
Okay.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so that brings us to our liaison updates. I hope everybody had a lovely Thanksgiving. Michael and I went to the Remsenburg Elementary School for their feast, and it was
Good.
wonderful to see all the children. They were so sweet.
They played a lot of music.
Mhm.
They
Dancing,
sang songs. There was
yeah.
a balloon, a Macy's style balloon parade.
Wow.
The youngsters, like in the kindergarten, first grade, went up with like the 5th graders and the 6th
Yeah,
graders,
they
and
buddied up. That
they all
was
waved.
wonderful.
They had such a great time. It was really, and the turkey was really good, by the way.
Did you get to sing Attitude of Gratitude?
No, oh, we did. We did say many blessings for all. That's what it was.
Yeah.
It was very nice. He did such a nice job.
The supervisor and myself Tuesday went to the senior luncheon.
Oh, yes, we did.
We had a
That's
very
right.
wonderful
Senior
time,
center lunch,
and I have to. I
Hampton Bays.
met Paul, who's Colleen's downstairs husband. There, the staff there works very hard catering to the seniors, make them very happy. I sat next to a lady, Wendy, who grew up in East Hampton and Montauk, and I actually told her I worked for Perry Dory for a couple of years, and she said her brother did for a few years, and I showed her some pictures of some fishing boats when I worked in Montauk, and she actually knew the dock and the boats, and she told me her experience when her and her father was out fishing the day the Pelican rolled over. And I said my father was actually down there picking up fish, and they used his truck to house some of the people in it, and had a very wonderful time. And also, I have to shout out to Ray that it's his birthday. I said I would.
Oh, that's right. It was
I
his
said I would
birthday.
mention that. If you see Ray, tell him happy birthday in Hampton Bays.
And then Michael and I went to the tour yesterday for the North Sea solar array, which was very impressive.
Very impressive. 11,000 solar units.
Panels, yeah.
Everything's wired up. They're just, we gotta wait for PSEG. It looks really good. They put a lot of work. U.S. Steel, and
All
local
companies,
concrete.
Yeah, Eldor Electric, XCAV.
Was it cold?
Kearsarge and Eldor, and it was a little chilly. It was very nice to see, though. A lot of hard work went into that, and
We're gonna have a flip the switch for all of us to go and officially start the system.
Oh, that's good.
I'm impressed that they began the installations in what, October, and
July.
I'm sorry, June and it's finished in October. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's pretty fast.
Yeah.
I would like to have actually Kearsarge come in and maybe do a work session on it for the community, because I know now that it's up and running, it's it's big and people have more questions. It was kind of like a abstract thought before. Now it's something they can see, and I've been receiving some questions about it. So I think it'd be helpful to have them in and just go through the whole process of how it is, how how they met all the standards with the cap, and safety concerns and
I think that's a good idea. And
end of life stuff, just so people know.
Yeah, and just so you know too, and the community, if they are, and Bill, you know this, the next, I don't know when the North Sea CAC meeting is going to be held, but Frank Sapone and Lynn will be at the North Sea CAC meeting to discuss the project as well, just to sort of go over the specifics, understand how Meadow works with PSEG, and
I'll talk to Janice about putting it on a work session.
yeah, that's great.
Do you have any updates, Cindy?
Oh, just East Quogue Holiday on Main is this Saturday from 1 to 5. They have a ton of vendors and events, and it ends with the tree lighting at the East Quogue Village Green at 5 o'clock, and it's just always a really, really super nice event. So.
Yes, and also, let's see, on Saturday, Friday. What's the 6th? Friday?
Friday is tomorrow,
Oh, yeah.
6th, yeah.
Yeah, so Eastport tree lighting, you mentioned that, 6 to 8, and then West Hampton Beach Performing Arts Center is having a holiday stroll on their main street in West Hampton from 6 to 9. Lots going on. The windmill lighting is tonight, 5:30 at the campus, college campus.
Also tonight is Ladies Auxiliary Sag Harbor. They'll be having their event.
Last night was the big duck lighting, which was very fun. The county exec came out for that one.
Nice.
Tell me, John, do you have some
Mhm.
update?
It's good to see the community solar about to come online. That's been a project that has been in the works now for 3 or 4 years. I want to certainly give a shout out to Councilman Bouvier for that. A lot of the grants that we are receiving is work that he has done with our sustainability committee, and so I hope he'll certainly be there to flip the switch, and others too. Jay was a big supporter of that as well. So it's good to see 11,000 panels up on
capped landfill.
Capped landfill, right?
Really
So,
great stuff.
Last night I attended our youth in government program. Peter Stricker and Tracy Colson were there. We have a good group of students working. They're writing bills, and we'll be going to Albany up this fall. Additionally, last night I was at the Hampton Bays Alliance discussing pro-housing community. We had Kathleen from New York State HCR there, and her team answered a lot of questions. It was well attended. I was there along with Curtis Highsmith discussing pro-housing community initiatives and various grant opportunities to the community. So it was a really great night and well attended. And so I couldn't go to the Big Duck. So,
Yeah.
but it can only be in one place at one
can't
time,
get
try as you
blown
may.
yourself.
So, and you know what, and I think, I hope the board really, pushes forward on the pro-housing community, because the grants, there's significant opportunity there. And, this was something, the pro-housing community resolution, that we had brought up at a work session in September, and then brought it to the town board in October. There were some questions, and and then we had yet another work session. We actually pulled it back and tabled it and had another work session. So the work session, process here is, it's important, and we brought that forward, and then voted on it in November, and that's just the letter of intent. So there's a lot more to do, and I hope that the town does it as well. Last week, in our water district, Councilwoman McNamara congratulated our administrator for the water district and H2M for the $4.7 million grant that we received from the state of New York. And I think it's incumbent upon us to thank the people actually, the grant came from the state of New York. I want to thank Assemblyman Field, right? Absolutely. Senator Palumbo, they have to advocate for these things. And of course, the governor of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul. These are somewhat discretionary funds from the bipartisan infrastructure bill, and $4.7 million is certainly a lot of dollars, and it's going to help the people of Hampton Bays put in the filters that we need for this district. This on top of a $2.7 million grant that the town received on behalf of the people of Hampton Bays in 2022. So, $7.2 million in grant funding from the state of New York is much appreciated.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, and like I said, I will not be here on December 10th meeting. I will be in Albany for orientation to take my seat in the New York State Assembly. So thank you for co-sponsoring my bills.
We will miss
Putting
you.
it forward.
Yes.
You'll
I
be
will
here
watch.
for other meetings.
Yeah.
Just remember, we need some more grants down there.
Yeah, don't forget about us when you get to Albany. Tom.
We want some
Wait,
grants.
is that a joke? Are you kidding?
I just want to mention, because the solar was mentioned and people that helped, I want to thank Frank Sapone, who really did all of the community outreach on that project from start to finish. So
Good
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, we'll make sure that he comes to the
Yeah, I didn't
public,
mean to
the
leave
work
Frank out.
session.
No, I
He's
just-
still part of it.
And flipping the switch. I wanted to say I went to the Hampton Bays Chamber. They have a ribbon cutting. They have a new office.
Yeah, I was
It's
supposed to
adorable.
go to
It's
that.
very nice looking. It's 15A West Montauk Highway, just behind the sidewalk. And I'm happy for them that they found a space.
Yeah, that was a
And they're
long
very
time
happy
coming.
too.
Yeah. Good for them.
And on Monday night, Bill and I attended the meeting in West Hampton
Oh, yes.
at
Forgot
the
about
Village Hall to roll out just to get the community involved to see the renderings. for
Everybody
the
was happy.
Preliminary
that.
plan.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, everybody wants a little bit more, but
Yeah.
we'll
But
see what we can do.
We did, Nick did do a rough drawing of the skate park sitting inside of it. And-
We'll see. We'll
and a
we'll
payout.
show the board what it was that the community, give you all a summary of what the comments were, and Nick can tell us if there's any room to.
I heard Bill's going to
Accommodate.
give him a skate park.
We talked about it.
Yeah, they asked for it.
They asked about it.
I'd
They
like-
wanted a pump track, they wanted more athletic fields, they wanted a gymnasium with basketball, so there were a lot of requests, but there were a lot of people were very happy with the
They're very
plan the way it was too.
Those things are at Red Creek Park.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
And we're doing the skate park, and
Yeah,
Yeah.
to the tune of
that's happening now.
Thank you-
a lot of.
Thank you for your
money to
leadership on
upgrade
that, Maria. I
Oh,
know
you're
that there's
welcome.
been a lot of
Pleasure.
Yes.
work that's been.
Yeah, and
put into
Bill
that.
also, it's
Yeah.
good to have
Teamwork,
the
the whole
push.
board.
Yeah. So, all right, well, if that's, nobody else has any other comments, then I move to go into executive session to discuss acquisitions and litigation and then close.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.